Well, hello everybody out there in the land. This is Chris from HHNlegacy.com with another exciting episode of Topher's Log. So at the very beginning of the season, I promised you guys an updated house and scare zone ranking video. A little bit different this year because usually I keep a running commentary on all my houses and stuff like that as I go through. I didn't really quite do that this year. I did keep track of them, but I didn't really talk about it anywhere. So it's kind of like we're about to enter the fourth week of Halloween Horror Nights. I can't believe it's going to be the fourth week already. We're almost through the month of September. It is crazy. So stuff like this is still going to change. By the time we get to the end of the event, I guarantee you, stuff at the top will probably be switched around a little bit, and stuff at the bottom will be switched around a little bit. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, when I do my final wrap-up video at the end of the year. The one thing I'll say about the houses this year is that I think that, I mentioned it in the other video, I think the houses are fine this year. I don't think we have a GOAT or a standout this year like we had last year. Stuff like Dead Man's Pier and stuff. I don't think we have one of those this year. I think most of the houses are either good to meh, kind of mediocre. With one being probably, considered quote unquote bad. But I don't think that we really have that wow house this year. There's one house that I think comes close to that, that sort of Dead Man Pier awe moment or moments. But I don't think that we have one this year. I think everything is pretty straightforward this year. It is what it is. But like I said, everybody's going to have their own subjective opinion on these things, it's just a list. It's my list. It is what it is. So before we get to the actual rankings, I did want to pop up real quick where my hype lists were at the beginning of the year. So let's not waste any more time. Coming in, probably already going to get me to some trouble. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Universal Monsters Unmasked. Now, this was number 9 on my list the first and second week of the event before it sort of dropped down to number 10. Those who follow me or have been following me for a long time know that I love the Universal Classic Monsters. I love when Halloween Horror Nights uses them. But I do think this is the least successfall of the current Universal Classic Monsters run that we have had so far. I think it's too dark in here. All these pretty sets and stuff like that. Like, I don't think you really sort of take in the sets that well, just because it's not very well lit. Unlike I thought Universal Monsters Legends Collide last year had a really good balance there when it comes to lighting. I like the hides in here. The cast is fine. The costumes for the Invisible Man, stuff like that. This is one of those ones that sort of the blogger crowd is sort of latched on to certain phrases that are said inside this house, like extra, a little kid trying to sell the newspaper. I just don't think that this house has very good flow, doesn't have very good energy. The story is kind of muddled and lost a little bit. Of course, they updated the three-pronged attack from the scare actors last year, giving us a four-pronged attack in here, which is just like last year, is very dependent on timing. Not my favorite of the current Universal Classic Monsters run. My last run-through of the house was actually one of my best run-throughs of the house, so we'll see if it can sort of uptick and get to the number 9 spot at the end of the run. Speaking of number 9, probably also going to get me into some trouble, is going to be Chucky Ultimate Kill Count. I do not think that Chucky Ultimate Kill Count is the best house at the event this year. In fact, I think it's probably the worst put together house at the event this year. But what I like about this house a lot is that it's sort of embraced its badness in a way. The cast, I think, is sort of latched on to that a little bit, and it sort of brings up the energy in the house, which I enjoy quite a bit. I think this house is a lot of fun, even though it doesn't, like the storyline is a little bit hard to follow, unless you're really kind of into the storyline. It's not conveyed all that well in the house. But if you do latch onto the story and you kind of get what's going on, one of the bigger complaints about the house is that it doesn't look finished, and I think that's sort of the point, because Chucky sort of stopped the team from building the house because he didn't like what they were doing. I love the voiceover work in here. I think the Chuckies, on the screens, I think are very funny. The sort of bleeping stuff. Chucky, of course, does have a Q video, which everybody loves. But I think that video was shot in Hollywood. But I digress. He does have a Q video that you can watch. But all the little Chuckies like throughout the house, when he pops up in the videos, I think are a lot of fun. I think this house is a lot of fun, even though it is not the best. I just have more fun walking through this house than I do in the Universal Classic Monsters, Universal Monsters Unmasked, I should say. Not the best house, but by the time we get to the end of the event, I could see Chucky sliding back into the number 10 spot, almost like a Hellblock Horror last year. That house was definitely not the better of the put together houses last year, but I had a lot of fun walking through Hellblock Horror last year, so I didn't dock it too much, although I'm pretty sure I clocked it in at last year, but I still had a lot of fun with it last year. I think Chucky might end up in that position this year. Kind of disappointing because I was looking forward to both Universal Monsters Unmasked very much and Chucky Ultimate Kill Count. Ultimate Kill Count probably is the one that I was the most confused about when I walked in. I was like, what happened here? But I still have some fun with the house. So coming in at number 8, moving up on the list, is going to be Stranger Things Season 4. Was at number 7 the first 2 weeks of the event, but sort of dropped down to number 8. I think the house does fine conveying sort of a condensed version of Season 4. I think the scares are okay in here. I think there's too many Vecnas. I think the Vecnas kind of got into the Demogorgon curse there from like the first house where like every scare was the Demogorgon. Vecna's everywhere in this house. So he is the ultimate scare in this house, which as he should be, but it's just sometimes it's a little weird with him popping up in certain places. But I do like what they do here. This curse of the drop cloth background. Stranger Things is kind of the only one that does it this year, but it's kind of everywhere. I do think it's used well, but it is a little jarring sometimes when you see the drop cloth backgrounds. I do like what they did with the Dustin Eddie thing. I thought, and that has the big drop cloth background. I thought that did fine. It's got the projections of all the demo bats and stuff like that. I think that is probably the wow part of the house. Although the Vecna layer stuff is pretty good. Good scares in here. I like the way it ends too. I think the sort of it really captures the sort of cliffhanger nature of the ending of Season 4. I thought it did that very well. Sort of coming up in the bottom part of the list. Not the best all be all of houses, but I do like what they did here. I think it captures it well. I know there's been some complaints about the lack of Hopper and the no Russia stuff, but like that's kind of I guess understandable given the current state of the things in the world, the no Russian stuff. But there is no Hopper in here. Spoiler alert, Hopper does not show up. At least I don't remember seeing him in the house. So it is what it is. But that's because of all the Russian stuff going on. So, that's understandable. I think the sort of transition from the beginning to all the 11 stuff doesn't quite work. But once you get into that part of the house, I think everything works fine. It's sort of like the clunky beginning that doesn't quite work, but once you get into the 11 stuff, the Nina stuff, the Nina project stuff, once you get to that point in the house, I think it's fine. I think the house works fine. So Stranger Things coming in at number 8. So coming in at number 7 is going to be The Last of Us, which actually was ticked up a spot. So the first 2 weeks of the event, it was at number 7. Number 8, and then ticked up to number 7. So The Last of Us, I think is fine. I think the sets in here are good. I've said this before. It just totally feels like The Walking Dead. I cannot get The Walking Dead out of my brain with this house. It just feels too much like The Walking Dead to me. Just the way that it's set, the way that it's lit, the grayness of it, all that stuff. It just feels like The Walking Dead. That being said, I do think this is a scarier than the Walking Dead houses that were at the event. For all those years. I think the clicker stuff at the end, there's like that gauntlet at the end of the house that I think works very well. The beginning of the house, just like Stranger Things, I think is a little clunky. I think they had a little trouble trying to navigate the beginning part of the house, but I think once you get into the meat of the house, I think everything works fine. I think the clickers are really scary, especially, like I said, that gauntlet at the end where it's just all these clickers are coming at you, the big bloated guy, all that stuff. Again, coming from somebody who's never played the game, I have seen the show, but I don't think that sort of hindered my experience. In fact, like there's the sort of residential street part of the show with the big bloated guy. Like I recognize that, in the house because I'm pretty positive for all intents and purposes the show and the game are pretty close. So there's no real surprises, I guess, if you've only seen the show. It is what it is. But I like the house quite a bit. I think the sets are really nice in here. Sort of when you first walk in, you've got the truck crash, all that stuff. Like I think the sets are fine, and I think the scares are really good in here too. Like I said, still kind of just feels like The Walking Dead, but I think the scares are better. So I think they got that sort of figured out. But it still just feels like The Walking. I cannot get The Walking Dead out of my brain when I walk through this house. It just feels like The Walking Dead. So, but coming in number 7 is going to be The Last of Us. So coming in at number 6 is going to be Yeti Campground Kills. This one actually ticked down from the first couple weeks of the event. For me, was at number 5, now at number 6. Basically, Universal's attempt at Cocaine Bear. That's literally what this house feels like. Maybe they wanted to do Cocaine Bear, but literally feels like Cocaine Bear. In fact, Cocaine Bear, the trailer for it plays in the Music Plaza stage throughout the course of the event. So I don't know. Maybe they wanted to do Cocaine Bear, and then somebody said probably not a good idea, so they kind of came up with the idea for Yeti Campground Kills. I don't know. But I like the story going on here. It's kind of fun. Another sort of tongue-in-cheek funny house this year. The fact that the young Yeti is killed, which then causes the Yetis to be all mad and go on amok. But then the mom of the kid who's killed, like there's and then she gets on a rampage. Like all that stuff, I think works very well. It's very fun. Set in Cary, Ohio. Yes, it is. I mentioned this. I believe it was on whatever the website's called now, X, Twitter, whatever it is. Or Instagram, whatever. The campground is called Shadow Creek Campsite. Shadow Creek is located in Cary, Ohio. It is literally the secret government facility that created the Dogs of War from Havoc and Havoc Derailed, which is located inside Cary, Ohio. So the actual campsite, Shadow Creek Campsite, located in Cary, Ohio. So of course, the Yeti Terror of the Yukon that was up in the Yukon. This one, for all intents and purposes, is set in Cary, Ohio. So it is what it is. But I think the scares in here is very cool. Of course, they just kind of reuse the Yeti costumes from before, which is fine. But like I said, it kind of feels like Cocaine Bear to me. And I think, and there's even a bear in there. HHN Bear is in there. So it feels like Universal's attempt at Cocaine Bear. Whether or not that was intentional or not, that's kind of what it feels like to me. But it is very fun. I love the setting in here. Like I said, the scares, the story, I think works very well in here. Kind of ticked down a little bit because the intensity was kind of the last couple runs that I've gone through. The intensity was ticked down. I think the last time I went through, it appeared like there was a cast change. I don't know. That's sometimes there's cast changes. And you kind of miss everything. This one is also kind of dependent on a lot of your timing in the conga line, there. But fun house, fun setting, and like I said, just kind of feels like Cocaine Bear. And tick down from number 5 down to number 6. So that could depending on how the intensity goes as we run through the rest of the event, could go back up to number 5. We will see. But coming in at number 5 is going to be The Darkest Deal. This is the one that was at number 6 and ticked up to number 5 to me. For me after the first couple of weeks. The story in here is fantastic. I love how everything is conveyed. A trend that I've noticed in the houses this year is, and even out in the scare zones, is all these little like LED like effects that are in these houses. So for example, in The Darkest Deal, when you walk through the cornfield, yes, there is corn in The Darkest Deal. When you walk through the cornfield, you get to the part where pine straw spruce is making the deal at the crossroads, and His signature appears on the contract in LED, that little magic LED sort of. You see his signature being signed. There's a lot of that this year. There's a lot of those little LED things. There's a lot of it in Dueling Dragons, but there's also a lot of it in here. There's even one. Another trend is sort of like the LED things in the actors' costumes. So, for example, there's the part at the end of the house when you see pine straw, spruce. I'm going to butcher that name this entire season, so I said it before. It is what it is, so bear with me. But pine straw, spruce. When he's when the devil comes for collection, and he does the thing, and then he falls on his microphone. There is a little LED trigger that happens over the heart of the scare actor. Before you enter hell, which I love. I love the ending of this house. You just straight up going through the bowels of hell, which I think is fun. But there's a lot of that this year. A lot of those little LED sort of, they're just like embedded in things. And this house has it quite a bit. But I love the story in here. I think the scares in here are great. Like I said, I love when we go to hell. I think that part's really fun. And, just kind of meandering through the progression of, Satan's deal is always coming to collect. It's always kind of, in the background, as you go through the house. I think is fantastic. And like I said, I think this is probably one of my favorite finales for a house this year. Just straight up walking through the bowels of hell, which I love. So that's coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is going to be the nostalgia-driven Dueling Dragons Choose Thy Fate. I love this house. I don't care. I think this house is a lot of fun. This is probably the funnest house for me this year is Dueling Dragons. There's a lot of stuff to look at. If you are a fan of Dueling Dragons, and if you have that nostalgia bite like I do, this house is going to be really fun for you because just walking through. And you know what? I think the scares in here are good too. I know some people have kind of poo-pooed the fact that it's just all pretty stuff like that, but I think the scares in here are really fun too. And I think the sort of compromise of using a puppet hand as like one of the dragon claws coming through the wall, I think is fantastic. So as one of the scares, there's a lot of like I said, those little LED embedding in the walls thing to sort of simulate the magic and stuff like that that's happening in here. Like I said, a lot of fun, a lot of really cool like just blasts of fog coming at you to simulate sort of the dragon breath and whatnot. And just like I said, the sheer nature of nostalgia that's driving you inside this house, I love so much. I love the costuming in here. Like I said, the effects are great, and of course it's got that double ending. If you see Merlin at the end of the house, then you've won. You basically won. If you don't see Merlin, you've lost. So, and I've found that going right, at least so far, every time I've gone to the right, Merlin shows up, so I've won. And if I go to the left, we've lost. So I'm not sure if they switch it up. That's just the way that I've noticed. But just for your own knowledge, if you see Merlin, you've won. If you don't see Merlin, you've lost. So it is what it is. But I unabashedly love this house. Coming in at number 3 is going to be one that was at number 2 there for the first week. Is going to be Blood Moon Dark Offering. This is the house that I think is the closest sort of wow house that we have this year. That we had for Dead Man's Pier last year. This house is dark. The sets are great. The effects are great. The scares are great. This house is very moody. This house is competing right now with my top 3 are competing with number 1. So just so you know, all 3 of these houses are competing to be number 1 at the end of this season. So, but I love the scares in here. I love the colors in here. The vibes, everything in here worked for me in Blood Moon, which is funny because, it was not high on my list, high on the hype list at the beginning. But this house is just great. This feels like an old school Horror Nights sort of house with modern setting. which I modern sort of set design, I should say. I love this house unabashedly, and it is quickly climbing to number 1. So I love this house. Coming in at number 2 is going to be probably the biggest surprise of the season for me, The Exorcist Believer. And yes, it is competing for my number 1 this year. This house is very well done. Great scares, great atmosphere, great effects, great smells. Everything in this house, I think, works, so well. It is very, very hard for me to choose a number 1 this year. I thought at the beginning of the run that I did have a solid number 1, but that's not the case because my number 1 has sort of gone down a little bit. Things have sort of changed a little bit in my number 1. But number 2 and 3, man, Exorcist and Blood Moon are really competing for that number 1 spot. I think the scares are great in both houses. And I think I said in the opening weekend video, what's great about Exorcist Believer is I think that not knowing anything about the movie works for this house's benefit. I think it works as just a straight up possession house. I don't think you need to know anything about the movie walking through this house. I think the scares, the set design, the cast in here, I think makes up for it tenfold. I don't think you need to know anything about the house. About the movie. I think everything else works just as well. I love this house. I cannot stress how much I love The Exorcist Believer. It is what it is. So coming in at number 1 is going to be Dr. Oddfellow's Twisted Origin. Another one that I love. I love the sets in here, the scares in here. The cast in here is phenomenal. They bring it every single time. But the intent, I've noticed the last couple run-throughs, the intensity has kind of gone down. So we'll see if it can maintain that whole thing throughout the run. But right now, currently my favorites, and also, of course, I love it for the Easter eggs, which, by the way, the next episode of Into the Fog, featuring the revelations about what we found out about Dr. Oddfellow this year, is coming out soon. I am hard at work on making that video. Hopefully I'll have it out before the end of Halloween Hornets this year. We will see. But that's happening. But all the Easter eggs inside Oddfellow's Twisted Origins, I love the scares, the sets. Like I said in the other video, I think this is probably one of the more elaborate sets that we've had inside a Sprung tent in quite some time. I think everything works in this house, but the intensity has kind of gone down for me a little bit in the last couple of run-throughs. So whereas Exorcist and Blood Moon have maintained that intensity, I can see one of those two overtaking Oddfellow at the end of the run here. We will see. But my God, especially The Exorcist. The Exorcist was a surprise. That house is so good. I love The Exorcist Believer. I love the scares. I love the vibe. It is just a great house all around. And Blood Moon Dark Offerings, or Offering, I should say, both of those houses just competing. They are just competing for that number 1 spot. So, quick recap. So, coming at number 10, Universal Monsters Unmasked. Coming at number 9, Chucky Ultimate Kill Count. Number 8, Stranger Things Season 4, Last of Us. Number 7, Yeti, Campground Kills, coming in at number 6. Number 5, The Darkest Steel. Number 4, Dueling Dragons, Choose Thy Fate. Number 3, Blood Moon Dark Offering. Number 2, The Exorcist Believer. And coming in at number 1 currently is going to be Dr. Oddfellow's Twisted Origins. Let's quickly talk about the scare zones. I don't think the scare zones are as good as they were last year. I think the top 2 are very, very good. And I think we have a couple of middle, and then the last one is I just don't like the last one all that much. Coming in number 5 is going to be Dr. Oddfellow's Collection of Horror up there at the front of the park. Not a very good scare zone. Wasn't expecting it to be anyway, so it is what it is. I do like the little show they have with Oddfellow. That's great. Coming in number 4 is going to be Shipyard 32 Horrors Unhinged. This suffers again. No matter what they do over there in San Francisco, there's just not a whole lot of room to move around in there, and it just hinders everything in there. Plus, for whatever reason, the staff over there is, probably because of how crowded and congested it gets, they are very much like, if you stop for a fraction of a second, you're being quickly ushered to move. So you can't really take a whole lot of stuff in there. It is what it is. I like the characters. I like some of the sort of, pop-up, little show things that happen in here. It is what it is. But so that's number 4. Coming in number 3, Dark Zodiac, I think is probably the most disappointing Scare Zone for this year. I was expecting more, but I love the costumes in here, the setting, the vibe, the scare actors I think are great in here. So that's number 3. Coming in number 2, Jungle of Doom, Expedition Horror, I think is a great Scare Zone. Also very important for the lore for Dr. Oddfellow. Whatever that plant creature is, which is also in Collection of Horror, I love the design of that thing. I think that thing is awesome. Great Scare Zone. Also, as usual, tends to suffer from the crowds. But I love the story in here. I love the costuming in here, and I love the actors in here. I think this is a great Scare Zone. So coming in number 1, obviously no surprise. Vamp 69, Summer of Blood. Probably my favorite New York Scare Zone in a long time. The actors in here are fantastic. I love the interactions. I love the sort of random events that they do. A lot of great intensity here. A lot of great, just energy. The energy in this Scare Zone is fantastic. The music, I can spend hours in here just listening to the music. Like last year, some of the music gets stuck in your head. Last year it was Mambo number 5, excuse me. It was Hey Mambo Italiano, not Mambo number 5. That's the wrong Mambo. That was the one stuck in my head last year. This year, of course, it's Sweet Caroline. Everyone, that is just, it's endlessly stuck in my head now. But I love Vamp 69 Summer of Blood, which, based on my hype list was very low. So, but I love what they've done with this Scare Zone. My favorite Scare Zone. I don't think the Scare Zones are going to change all that much. I think that's kind of where they're going to be. The houses still have room to shift and move, but depending on intensities, and different run-throughs and things like that, cast changes and whatnot, things at the top will probably change, and things at the bottom will probably shift around by the time we get to the end. So that is an update. All my houses and Scare Zone rankings, currently where they sit, where they are, where are your current rankings. Like I said, my list, your list is probably going to look a lot differently. I guarantee people are going to have Chucky at dead last, which is fine, because Chucky, like I said, is not a very well put together house, but I still have fun with it because of the cast, and then the puppetry and stuff like that. Like, that stuff kind of overtakes it for me. Then Universal Monsters Unmasked, which a lot of people really like that house. I just think that it is the weakest of the current run that we've had. And I'll leave it at that. And it hurts my heart to say that, because I love the Universal Monsters and I love these houses. I love this current run. I don't want this run to end. Make more Universal Classic Monster houses. I want this run to continue. But currently sitting at the bottom. Could change depending on, it could get into the number 9 spot, but currently it is not. And like I said, my top 3 are currently all competing for the number 1 spot. The middle of the pack is kind of the middle of the pack. I don't think there's going to be too many changes there, but 1 through 3 are they're just in a constant battle with each other for that number 1 spot. I know a lot of people like the Darkest Steel. Darkest Steel is kind of really high on a lot of people's list. I really like the Darkest Steel, but I have not yet had that really intense run through that I know a lot of people have had. So, but I love the story. I love the story in Darkest Steel. So that's not knocking anything with that one. I will be back out at the event this week. I also have on Saturday, I was invited to Sir Henry's for their media thing. So I will be out there on Saturday for that. So until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.